This week on A to Z Running, we ask the internet what the best running workout is, and we've got the top 5 answers for you.
In the world of running, another world record fell on the roads.
And NCAA Cross Country Regionals had some fascinating moments.
And are spray-on shoes the next great shoe innovation? All this and more on A to Z Running. Hey everyone, welcome back to A to Z Running, where we help runners thrive with information, inspiration, and coaching services. I'm Andy.
And I am Zach, and you can learn everything you need to know about our services at AtoZrunning.com. Find us in the places we're posting content, wherever you like to listen to podcasts for one, and Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify as well.
Now, Zach, do you have any running updates?
Sure. So I was actually, I felt like I ought to explain myself a bit more, because last week when I was sharing a little bit about the current situation, I was being kind of vague on the details, which is a general tendency of mine with these things. But I was talking about this scenario where I'm signed up to run a track race at one of the universities in town, and particularly have to enter with a specific time, because they're going to use those entry times to seed runners in the different heats. And so because you're running a track race, they only run like 15 people in one race at a time. Then they have to do that. And I checked the entries recently just to get an idea for how many are entered. And there's a lot. There's like 60 or so or something. I actually don't know off the top of my head. It was probably a terrible guess. But there was a lot. And so many heats. And my point last week was, if I don't think that I'm capable of running the time I seated myself in, then I feel like I probably should withdraw from the race, because otherwise I'm taking the spot of someone else who may be able to run in that race and benefit from it, because these collegiate runners are all trying to qualify for stuff. And so it would behoove me to be honest as much as I can about where I'm at. And so since I entered before I actually knew where my fitness was going, that could be the situation here. I could potentially also ask to change my entry standard, which would more accurately reflect what I think I could run, and then they would seed the heats a little bit more accurately on account of that. So that's an option too. But that's what I mean. I was being vague about the details. So what happens in this situation was I reached out to the race director and said, hey, I'm not quite sure what your caliber of field is going to look like, but I have an inkling that I would like to try to run under 14 minutes and just see what happens. Be in a race that is that fast and just see if it's possible. But I don't actually know if I can do that. So I did not seed myself that fast. I seeded myself what I thought was a little bit more conservative number and put 14:20. However, that's only 3 seconds slower than I've ever run in a 5,000. And as I've been reflecting on that further, I'm thinking that's actually quite fast. And I have no reason to believe that I could do that right now. You must understand, when I ran that 5,000 meter time that I'm referencing, my personal best was 11 years ago. 11 years, Andy. Is that not a little bit startling?
Yep, when we can start putting things in decades, yep.
Yeah, so it was actually at this meet in this location 11 years ago I ran that time. And so now I'm contemplating this, and I'm thinking I don't really know.
Well, he has run faster in every distance since then, so it's not crazy to think that he would.
Shorter track ones.
Well, yeah, because you ran a mile, like close to what you'd run in the mile.
Yeah, but my mile PR has never been something.
I'm just saying everything has gotten faster. So I don't think it's crazy to think you could run fast, but I do think it's very difficult to seed oneself when you're not regularly doing that distance on a track.
Yeah. So here's the situation I find myself in. I mentioned last week that I kind of buggered my calf a little bit, and I'm trying to wear track spikes to make sure that I'm ready for that aspect of the race, and it's made my calf sore, and then I had to kind of chill for a couple of days, make sure that I didn't aggravate it more. And so training hasn't been terribly optimal, but this is a chance to shout out the ortho laser people, because I started doing laser right away after my calf was starting to get sore, and I have been able to train basically whatever I would like to do, so more optimal training because the laser effect is that the recovery factor has been substantially quicker than normal. So a sore calf, I can even do another one of those workouts in track spikes, and it makes my calf sore still at the moment, the same one. Clearly, it's not responding well to it, but the laser treatments in the following days allow it to recover quickly enough that I can get back and do it again soon after. Which this is not the way that I would recommend doing things in a normal situation. But when you're approaching, a race scenario and you're trying to get ready for a certain date, and there's a time crunch, it's amazing to know that there are assets out there. So anyone who has access to those laser people, it's worth seeing if it makes a difference. Because I'm pretty confident. I've done this now in several instances over the years. Received ortho laser treatments, and it has made a substantial difference every time. So that's where I find myself now. And here's what you all need to know. I am going to run a race on the roads next week, which is one of those turkey races. I'm going to do that. And that's going to tell me, because it's my first chance to really I don't use watches in training and stuff. I don't really time much. I'm also training in less than optimal circumstances because whenever the time is available is when I go for the run. So I've been doing my hard effort track work in freezing rain, and I've been doing it in that day when it snowed, the night before it snowed, when it was cooling down really quickly and started raining before it started snowing. I was doing a workout in that. So all of those things suggest I don't have good information yet about what is likely a good estimation of my potential in this race. So I'm going to run this turkey race, and I'm going to decide based on that whether or not I should reach out to the race director to make an adjustment, withdraw or change my seed time or something. We'll see. I don't know. So
that's kind of exciting.
Next time you hear
built
from
the
us.
suspense for it.
Actually, it's not next time you hear from us. It may be. Depends on when we publish the next episode, but may or may not have those details for you.
But eventually we will. So stay tuned. That's very interesting. I have less than interesting things to share. I'm still in a pattern of rehabilitation. So that's where I'm at. But I should say, that I was healthy and well enough to dance in that musical. So I'm very grateful. Every time that I did the little ballet dance thing, my hips would make audible sounds. So it didn't
Did everybody
hurt.
on stage hear?
No, but
your
the
hips?
girls who I was dancing next to, they could hear it. Anyway,
Did you turn to them and apologize and say, "I'm sorry"?
No, I didn't.
My hips
the
don't
first
lie.
time, my hips don't lie. Oh, that's so funny. But I was able to do it. I'm so grateful. I have been working on my back quite a bit at Endurance with Stephanie, and it has helped me tremendously. And even though I wasn't able to do as much of the running, I was able to do a lot of physical activity that normally would really aggravate. So I was
ballet.
grateful. But you guys are all thinking I had very simple ballet that I did in this show, and among some other dancing. But for me, that is a challenge, and I was able to stretch myself and experience growth and no injury that came from the dancing.
Yeah, but the folks at the local ballet reached out and asked if you're interested in participating in
He's
Nutcracker.
lying. He is
next.
totally
So
lying about that.
You clearly made waves.
No, that didn't happen. No.
Well, that's exciting. So we'll have more to share with you next time around. But for now, let's get started with a conversation about the best running workouts. So, Andy, I recently learned something that's relevant to
It's
our
good. Keep learning.
current
That's
series of episodes.
what we should do as humans. Continue to learn.
Well, I don't mean it like that. But so shout out to Kyle, who is one of those kinds of people who knows things, and he told me things. So we have been doing this series on our battle with search engines right now, and we're taking some kind of common prompt question query that runners tend to wonder about and ask about and talk about. We're running it through the search engine, and then we're seeing if it gives us helpful information and how helpful is that information. Should it be believed or trusted? All that kind of stuff. And as it were, we have found that Reddit forums come up in the top recommended things. It was with almost every, not almost every single topic.
Everything. And I actually
Every single
noticed on a different, just a random other query that I had, that Reddit was the second thing up too. So
Right.
Yeah.
So I supposed aloud that Reddit must be like paying Google or something to just always be one of the top 5 results. And smarter people than me say, well, they probably aren't, because that's illegal. And there's some antitrust violations going on in those scenarios. And so that makes sense. But what it is it's actually far more predictable than that, because Google has the Google search engine, which is the one we've been using predominantly, although not exclusively. As you know, we share what we find in the other ones too. Google has updated its algorithm in recent years to try to, basically what they have said is their attempt to show more credible content, or at least content that they deem to be more credible. And one of the things that influences a website's capacity to appear more credible to Google is the volume of publicly posted content, which to me seems like that would be one of the reasons for something to be less credible, not more credible. But as you might imagine, what they're doing is they're filtering out the lone blogger who's just writing their own thoughts and ideas and basically saying, we don't care about that. That's not credible information. I happen to disagree, because the lone bloggers are often highly expertised in the fields that they're blogging about, but it depends on the source individually. And this, once again, goes back to why it's important in school to learn how to research well, because now you're going to think that Reddit is a highly credible source on everything because it shows up every single time you search. But that's what we've come up with. That's where we have found ourselves. So Reddit does show up a lot for everything, and we think that's funny, and so we keep including it in our reactions. What do the Redditors have to say about this topic? Mm-hmm. So that brings us to today. We have done a few episodes now, and we're going to do at least a couple more. And if you have any burning questions that you hope we ask the search engines, make sure you share them with us. You can send us an email, questions@AtoZrunning.com, or you can comment on the places. And one of those burning questions is coming up shortly from a listener, which is great. But for today, we wanted to address what we feel is one of the most common, like, I wonder questions that runners have, which is, I wonder what the best running workout is. Like, what's the best one to do? Or best ones, if you can't narrow it down to one. So we searched it. What is the best running workout? And here's what we found.
I feel like that question in of itself is setting it up to have it not be what we would suggest, right? Because it's not one running workout.
Okay, so it is one of those, because we talked about this when Steve Magnus posted an article recently that was like the best running workout.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And then he went on to say there isn't a best running workout. But we do want to know if because this is something runners search for. We're not trying to trap the search engine. We're trying to find out what is it that people are going to find when they look for this.
That's valid, but I did want to bring that up.
But it is true. In principle, we're actually hoping in the back of our minds that these top sources on this question essentially say just that. They say things like, there's lots of great workouts. It has everything to do with something about your situation. And we'll get to that here shortly. Before we do, we wanted to share with you the top results.
All right. Tell us the top results.
Number 1 in Google, No Meat Athlete.
This is a blog.
Is a blog.
Huh.
Don't ask me.
That's unusual.
Don't ask me. I don't know why this one shows up number 1.
That's crazy, because I've heard from a lot of really excellent bloggers that they have reduced the amount of articles that they're writing because Google does not prioritize their work.
Right, because they're not falling into those categories in the algorithm. But the No Meat Athlete article in particular is, or the source site in particular, is more than just like a lone blogger kind of situation.
Okay.
For sure. Also is very much like a branded product focused kind of thing, which we see a lot of that stuff showing up top tier. But here's the part about this article that immediately stood out to me, was like, this article is written like somebody is trying to get you to go to their website, and they're using this topic as a way to get you to their website, but they don't really have anything to say about the topic.
Uh-oh.
It was very unfortunate.
Number 1 on Google?
I know. I'm reading through it, and I'm like, you have nothing special to say about this. like at all. You're actually not even saying things that make sense all the time. You're just basically saying, okay, this is a topic people are going to search for, so let's put an article about it on our site, and here's some words to put in that article. That's the way it felt when I was reading it. So a strong opinion right off the bat. My apologies. But it's like they say things like, runner logs nearly all of your miles in the exact same effort, and that's not okay. You need to vary that up. Okay, that's great. Speed is usually around 75% of max effort of your regular, like what people normally do. And first I'm like, really? That's pretty high. Like, I don't think most people are running 75% of their maximum effort day after day after day. You'd have to be pushing to do that. And okay, I guess it's true. Most people run their easy runs harder than what would technically be defined as easy. But even then, that's a crazy estimate. And so once again, we get the situation, and this really bugs me, when people just throw out statistics that they just made up. It's like, you made that up. That's not a thing anywhere. You just are guesstimating. So instead of throwing out a statistic and saying 75%, which you made up, you could just say harder than they should, or a reasonably hard effort. Anyway, they didn't do that. They gave us this number. And then they went on to say 75% of max effort is not fast enough to really make your body work hard and adapt, which is totally not true.
Right.
Because you don't have to be working hard to adapt.
That's like steady effort.
And 75% is definitely a high effort. So
the hard end of.
Right away. This is early in the article. You can see why Zach was like perturbed when I was reading this. I'm like, what are you giving me here in this article? So we disagreed right away. And then what's funny is they say, but 75% max effort is too fast to build much endurance. No, it's not. One, you can build endurance running any speed. Endurance isn't built by the speed. It's built by the volumes. And how is it too slow to adapt, but too fast to build endurance? That doesn't even make sense. Okay, so you get where I'm coming from. I had to share that excerpt with you so you get an idea that they are just putting words on the page. They don't seem to have anything to say about it. So then they went on in the article to just basically say, here are all the different types of runs. So I asked it, what is the best running workout? And they said, here's all of them.
Well, that's not terrible.
But they don't
all the
specify why some are better than others. They just say, here's all of them.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, you didn't answer my question. All right. So it goes on to things like easy runs, which they have a good explanation of what an easy run is. That's fine. That's fair. Tempo runs, which they just then basically say whatever you're going to find in Wikipedia if you Wikipedia tempo runs. Again, I don't think it's accurate at all. But tempo run is also one of those words that's used to describe a lot of different kinds of things, and it's really not a true workout.
Didn't this person say it pretty much close to max effort?
Just 85 to 90% of your max effort is a tempo run, which actually they said that's lactate threshold. But again, lactate threshold is not the same thing. So we're getting into a situation where they're just using the words like they found them somewhere and they put them on the page. They didn't necessarily have much to say about it, which is funny because then they went on to describe tempo as a pace again, which a lot of people do this in the running universe. And so if you're a coach and you're saying tempo means this pace relative to your 5K, relative to your 10K, that's fine. You can do that because you're defining tempo however you want when you're telling your athlete to do a tempo run. But the concept of a tempo run as a general concept is not a pace relative to some other thing. That's stupid. But
okay, you're getting a little bit negative.
I'm getting a little bit negative. Sorry. Okay.
At least they're like putting in the kinds of runs that we might talk about, though, even if it's not described perfectly.
So they have progression in there, which is a type, its own type of run, its own type of workout. I guess that it is in a sense. They also call a progression run a complete workout because you get all of the benefits of all the different things in one workout, which is not true. So we're going to just move on from that. Okay, and then they have hills. Okay, great. Hills build your explosive power and promote speed, which, again, just sounds like words you found somewhere and put them. And then they talk about intervals, ladders, fartleks, and all those types of things, and all kind of the same descriptions of each. And then they talk about long runs, which apparently, according to this source, has to be a high effort. Your long run
Really?
has to be a high effort.
Interesting. Not just a run that's long.
No, like at the point of the long run is to be a hard
Interesting.
long run. So that's a way to do a long run, but
that's not in of itself a long run.
no. So their summary ultimately was to have variety and do all the things at once. It was like you should do all of these things all the time. And so what it amounted to was, in my mind, was you wanted to find a way to get someone onto your website. And so you used that question, what's the best workout, to then just talk about running workouts. And so hopefully people are on your website now, which I got us to your website. You somehow did something right because you're number one in Google.
Podcast. Okay.
But so don't click on number one when you search that one in the query because you're not going to get an answer to your question.
So did you want to do reflections on that yet or no?
What are your thoughts?
Well, I do think that someone was trying to talk about running, and maybe they themselves were not a running coach. Maybe it's possible, and they're looking up these things, and almost like you know enough or have researched enough to use some words that are correct, right?
So it's like what Dave Stewart Jr. says. The worst thing you can say to someone who just failed is to say, "But at least you tried."
Well.
I'm kidding.
There was some stuff in there. Like, I think it's good to not identify like one workout that's the best. I think variety is good. So that emphasis on variety was not the worst emphasis.
We happen to agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But if everyone's doing all of those things all at once, they're going to be running workouts every day because that was more than 7 workouts.
Yeah.
But there is, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that we do periodization. So there's times you do some things, times you do other things, different combinations for different reasons. So there's more to be uncovered, but you can't get to that in just one article either. Right? So I think that it could have done, if for a number one Google search, that was, ugh.
That's what I'm saying.
But it used some of the words, which was probably why it's number one, because it used the key words.
It did. It did. Are you ready for it to get worse?
Uh-oh.
Not worse in the sense of like poorer quality.
Like
articles,
the next article? Are we moving on from that one? Is there anything that you wanted to add
No,
to that
you covered it well. But here's number 2 search result when we searched what is the best running workout from Very Well Fit, which I think is a pretty
very well known. Very well
known. They're like a strength thing.
Okay.
Very Well Fit. Basically, they took the approach. They just assigned a premise to your question and assumed that you are looking for the best way to spend 30 minutes only. And so then what they decided is, here are 4 workouts that you can do in 30 minutes. And that's how they answered the question. And I'm looking at that thinking, how did that show up as number 2? It's only like a parallel thought to the question.
Well, okay. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
When people come in, I guess you can imagine that most people are time poor. That's what I've heard. Most people are time poor, meaning they don't have enough time for all the things they need to do. So there will be a lot of people clicking on an article that they think will get them fit in 30 minutes or less.
Could be.
Time efficiency. So I don't think that they're wrong that their premise will get clicks or that it would appeal to many people. But if you're looking at running as a sport and development, this is not doing that. This is talking about fitness when you're time poor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, also, it's clearly written from the perspective of someone who is more like a CrossFitter than a runner. Like that's what they wrote. Their audience is clearly not the avid runner who's going to go do a marathon. Their audience is someone doing CrossFit or something of that nature who's looking for more running workouts to sprinkle into their routine. So once again, it's just strange to me that that's number 2. But what they said, are you curious what their 4 workouts are?
I am curious.
1 is hills.
Okay.
So like I said, CrossFitter mindset, right? 2 is ladders. So some kind of variated hard effort type of stuff. But then 3 is a HIIT workout. So now we're like not even really doing a running workout anymore. And 4 is sprinting intervals. Just go do sprints. which is basically a HIIT workout because then they sprinkle things in between the sprints.
Okay.
So they said HIIT workout twice because they really like them. Just odd. Just very odd to me that was number 2. Not a great answer to the question, but if you're the strength person who is trying to find a way to sprinkle better running workouts into your high intensity strength routines, then okay, you found probably a decent answer for yourself.
But did it answer our audience's question if they were to Google? No.
So
not the right answer.
Well, let's keep moving on, because then we get to number 3, Run Street, which I don't know.
Another blog.
I don't know what Run Street
right?
is, but yeah,
it's
some kind of running outfit that is basically like a blog.
Okay.
And this headline, 10 workouts to become a better runner.
Okay.
So once again, it's just give us all the things. And I hate to say it, but they didn't do that much better than the previous ones. Except that clearly the person writing this article knows more about running, like has more to say about running. And so you get more information around the different things, but it's really just a lot of like, here are all the things, and some of them are kind of strange. So they said there's 3 categories of workouts, by the way. There's base runs, which I don't know why they called it a base run, because basically they just meant easy runs, but they called it a base run. Then there's speed, which includes like everything, and we'll get to that. And then there's long runs. Right, okay, so long runs aren't base runs, although they probably could be, but they're not speed runs, as they have defined them.
No, they're long, Zach.
They're long runs. So there's that. And then they go on to then list all of the stuff within them. So apparently base runs, by the way, are really good to boost your mental toughness.
Really?
Which I think is actually the opposite. I think they're the least valuable for mental toughness because they're the easiest to do.
I think, but here, this is
Go ahead.
what I don't think that within the run it is challenging because often you have less need for focus than harder efforts. But I think when people are consistent over time and they build their fortitude to continually be consistent and to show up for something, that can make it mental toughness, right?
Yeah, true. And there is a layer too. You have to understand that one of the things that is the most difficult for a lot of our runners when we first start a season, and it's a runner who has not worked with us before especially, is when we start a season running very, very easy. And we're trying to build up some volume, and we got to keep you jogging. And you know yourself if you're listening to this right now, because a lot of times it's like that takes a different kind of mental effort. And it does.
And humility to run what you need to run for it to be the correct effort, which doesn't always look great on paper.
Or on Strava, which is why you should
Strava is
can
the new
Strava.
paper.
Get rid of it. By the way, just learned something else about Strava that makes it...
Zach.
No. This isn't a negative thing. It's just more people are probably not going to use it as much because...
Why? Tell me.
Because
I wanna know now.
it has to do with their integrations with third-party systems and the data sharing. So it may be that some people use it a little bit less because it won't integrate in the same way with some of those things. But that's so, yes, base runs. I don't agree that they are the thing that I would emphasize for boosting mental toughness. There are ways they can, but
there's
not
so
more
many
than the other
benefits.
ones.
Like, why not talk about all of the amazing benefits of
Yeah.
having the musculoskeletal resilience, being able to build your peaks higher.
Right. So there's that. Okay, and then they go on to their speed category, and it's all the stuff. And once again, so I have said this before. This isn't necessarily, I'm not attempting to rant on this one because I think it is honestly just a product of the common running vernacular.
Right. This is more semantics.
Yeah, the word speed is incorrect most of the time we use it as runners when we describe a workout as a speed workout, because developing your speed is something that does not happen in the way that people describe most speed workouts. Like they say, intervals or hills or some of those things. Well, I guess hills technically, let's set that aside. But they'll talk about higher effort runs as speed workouts. Go out and do a track session or something. And that's just fundamentally not the case. Speed development requires maximum speed development to enhance your speed. speed. Now you're talking about things like strength or speed endurance or something like that potentially when you're talking about all those other things, but you're not talking about speed fundamentally.
I think that you're just splitting hairs.
It's a semantic thing, but it matters because then when people start to talk about I'm trying to get faster, like raw speed faster, and I'm having a hard time, most of the time it's because they don't actually understand the difference. So in any sense, they do that here. They actually just lump all kinds of hard efforts into the category of speed. So they really don't mean speed, they mean high effort.
Which there is variant in the intent and adaptation depending on what kind of speed workout you're doing. It's too big of a category.
Yeah. But
again, true. it's an article, on the internet. So there's a few good nuggets in here, right? What are some good nuggets, Zach? Are there any good nuggets you want to point out?
So they talk about fartleks, which a fartlek actually
we love fartleks.
It could be a speed workout. But then they go on to
great workout.
They go on to give examples of fartleks like running 5-minute repeats with jogging in between. It's like, okay, well, yeah, technically that's a fartlek, but it's a really bad example because all you're doing is just intervals. And so what's the difference between an interval workout and a fartlek workout? Please explain that to me. And if you can't,
fartlek is a kind of interval workout.
I know. But my point is if someone can't explain the difference, then they shouldn't use both workouts as an example because a fartlek is an interval workout. An interval workout is a kind of fartlek workout. But there is a distinctive difference in what you're trying to accomplish with them. And if you don't know that difference, then there's no point in describing and having both categories.
Zach's very passionate about how valuable fartleks can be. So when it is misrepresented online, that makes him feel a little frustrated. I'm explaining to you.
It's a missed opportunity is what it is. It's an unfortunate thing. And so they talk about fartleks. They talk about intervals. Apparently they say, and this is one of the main points of intervals, and you can do them on a treadmill. But don't do interval workouts on a treadmill. It's a very bad idea.
Well, some people can.
Some can, but in general, it's really not a great idea because of the way your biomechanics work. The way your running mechanics work on a treadmill is it's not optimized for trying to run fast, and it can hurt you. It does to many runners, even if it's something that you do regularly. So if you're going to do something if you want to do something like intervals on a treadmill, do the incline thing. Like throw that incline way up there and you're really not running hardly fast at all, but it's going to be hard. Do that. That's a much safer way to do intervals than turning up the speed. But as it were, that's one of the main points they give for interval workouts. I don't know why. It just really struck the person as an important thing to note.
Maybe they live in Alaska or Michigan or Wisconsin.
Norway.
So
they appear to, at this point, just start throwing out effort levels as well, kind of randomly. Like they say you should run 80% for 400 repeats, which 80% of what? I don't know. It's not specified. 80% of maximum, I guess, but that's kind of low. But then they should say you should run 20 to 40% for recovery. But running at 20% is very difficult to do. Like you have to walk to run at 20%. In theory, if you're using these kinds of zones. So I think
maybe they do mean walking.
They could, yeah, they could.
Walking between...
Except they say running, but
okay, well.
But either way, you're right. They could mean walking, or that you could go down to walking. In principle, it seems like one of those situations where they're kind of just trying to ballpark things for you, and they just use numbers.
I feel like I'm learning about Google's algorithm right now.
Yeah,
they like numbers. For
no, that's not going to make a difference. Specificity.
And then also they like the specific keywords, like the names of the workouts, because I feel like they're throwing all those in.
But we've been told that those things don't actually matter anymore.
I don't know.
It has more to do with what is going on your site broadly.
But like what's going on?
Well, they must have a lot
of
very
curious
content and user interaction involved in their content.
Maybe.
But either way.
But you all don't really care about that. But
yeah. They talk about Yasso 800s as a way to improve your running speed, which once again is definitely not a speed workout. As a matter of fact, Yassos are very much not a speed workout. They're more like a threshold interval workout. They're not going to make you faster. They could make you stronger.
I mean, they make you faster. So let me just clarify what Zach's saying. They will make you faster because
like
you're
a
working
time
your
that
systems.
you run in it. Yeah, sure.
But he's talking specifically like speed development.
Yeah, right. So they also clearly include Yasso 800s because it's just a popular name of a workout. But it's also just an interval workout. So why didn't they just include that with their comments about
because they're trying to give people some options of things they could do.
But then say intervals and say here's a couple examples or something.
Okay. You're being a little nitpicky now.
I am. And they say ladders, which again is just an interval workout. Okay. Tempo run and not providing much to understand exactly what that should be. But then we got long runs after all of that. And they specifically say long runs are great for long races, especially helpful for long races. And our answer to that would, of course, be they're certainly more necessary for long races. But long runs are actually especially helpful for everything. All of
everything.
Period. So
yes.
the word especially there can't be used because they are literally as helpful for a mile race as they are for a 10-mile race. And all that kind of stuff.
It's more necessary, yes,
it's
for
more
the longer
necessary,
races, but they're
helping you,
helpful for every single runner.
Yeah. And then Hills made it in again. Oh, and HIIT workouts.
Oh,
which again is not a running workout. It's like a multi-strength workout. They also have this one where they just called benchmark workouts, which I think they just kind of made up themselves, which is fine. You can make up your own workouts if you want to. But what they meant by that is like a workout that like tells you about your current progress.
Time trials,
fitness.
maybe.
So time trials would be an example of a benchmark workout by their categories, I guess. Yeah. Here's my problem with this article. My summarizing statement after having read through the whole thing is it basically felt like they took the same paragraph and then just swapped out some words here and there throughout and just put the same paragraph over and over. Like the structure was identical.
Writer in you being critical.
Right.
We're talking about
it was like
here.
The information was so robotic that it was like, just give us something more alive.
Well, that's not what we're evaluating it on, though.
Yeah, true. Okay. Well, did it answer the question, Andy?
Which is the best? No. But it did give us some workouts that are real.
Yeah.
And like more real descriptions than the first one.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I mean, that's it. That I like your point. I think I would just agree with your point. It gave us a lot of information. It did not answer our question. It actually didn't even attempt to answer our question in the sense of like, didn't give reasons why you would do certain things instead of other things at certain times instead of other times. Didn't do any of that. Which brings us to number 4. Guess who?
I saw it. Reddit.
Number 4 was Reddit.
Well, this is the furthest down I've seen it.
Actually, that's true. Yeah. Well, no, I think it was 4 on one of the other ones too.
Okay.
But it's always top 5. That's the answer. Okay, so the question the questioner asked, because remember the way Reddit functions as far as when you pop up a query like this, is your question somehow matched someone else's question in Reddit, and then people replied in comments.
Okay.
And the question that they asked was, what are your go-to workouts? So, okay, that's closer to like best workouts, right? Which is, what are the things you like to do the most as a runner?
But like to do? And what is best for you?
It didn't talk about
things?
Prioritizing.
There's some things I really like to do, but they're not as beneficial.
No, but I think it's still closer to the heart of the question than those other ones, which are just here are all the workouts. So what ends up happening is all the responders just basically shared, here's what I like to do. And some gave some information about why. But when you get into a discussion forum like this, half of the people who post on discussion forums are just posting so that they have a response to the question. And the other half of the people are posting to share everything that they can possibly think of in response to the question. So you get these responses that are like 5 words long, and it's like, dude, I love intervals, of course. And like, that's the whole answer. I'm like, great. You were just really helpful to this whole discussion forum. And then you have these other people who write a whole article. And it's like, did you just copy that from your blog and paste it in there? It's the whole thing. It's funny to me. I get a kick out of Reddit. Got to not spend too much time there, though, because it's just like awful. All right. So one poster gave all the classic examples. I like 1K repeats. I like threshold repeats. Thank you, Ingebrigtsens, for making that even more popular. And I like hill repeats, and gave some explanations about here's how I do it. Not a lot of rationale as to why these are the ones that I like the most or why they're valuable, but yeah, okay, some particular examples. Do 6 1K repeats, do things like that. Another one said more information about like how I do certain workouts at certain times. I'm like, oh, now we're getting somewhere. So it's like, as I get closer to the race date, I change the workouts in this way. Now, what was strange to me is that this person does more intervals the closer they get to the race workout. Like, it might start with 6 by 400, and then when I get closer to the race date, I'm doing like 20 by 400.
Oh, interesting. So they're adding
Increasing volume
to
of
their
intervals.
intensity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which it aligns with the thinking behind the race pace prep kind of mindset, right? Because at the beginning of the season, you're not fit enough to run race pace for very long if you're doing just a pace. So it makes sense that you'd only do 6 of the reps because you can't handle any more than that. But by the end of the season, you can run 20 because you're in better shape. So that's what it reminded me of, but the poster didn't actually specify that as the reason why.
Wow.
They did say that it helps that progression. Totally separate thing. They also said that progression runs help build your confidence in your capabilities.
Oh, and that's like why we say not to do it.
Yeah.
Because we're like, hey, if the only reason that you're doing a fast finish to the end of a long run is because you want to prove something to yourself, but then it delays your recovery longer just to get 10 minutes of some harder running at the end of your long run, then that's not a good reason to do it, just to prove to yourself something.
Yep.
Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, so the problem with Reddit, as you find on most topic-focused discussion forums, is the exact opposite of the problem you encounter on a lot of like the articles out there on the web, because the general like bloggers tend to write like the person reading the blog doesn't know a thing about what they're writing about. So their level of depth is always quite shallow. Not always, but it generally is going to be quite shallow. That's why it's much better to read a book than it is to read a blog post. But on Reddit, it's the exact opposite, where they assume everyone knows what they're talking about. And so they don't give you enough information to fully understand the point they're trying to make. And it's aside from those who write their giant articles. So it is just kind of like lots of running slang and jargon on this post, and basically everyone like trying to say what they think is the coolest workout. And
well, we didn't actually talk about what we thought of the whole adding reps to getting closer to finish date. We should talk about that. So I like the idea that things change in your training when you get closer to your
different things at different times.
Different things at different times. I like that. But that specific thing we do not recommend, and I want to be clear about that.
True that.
So
it's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea.
Because what it speaks to is it's a fundamentally broken approach to building fitness. And so if your goal is to be as fit as possible come race date, that's not the most effective way to do it. It's not that it's ineffective, but it is not at all highly effective.
But everyone who's listening is thinking, then Zach, throw me a nugget. Then tell me what I should do differently closer to race date.
Go back and listen to our 6 years worth of podcast episodes.
We can throw a couple nuggets.
Yeah, well,
but we do work more on shorter stuff towards the end, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, because your structure can support it, because you've done a lot of work preparing your body, getting ready. And we've developed your aerobic capacity significantly, which has allowed us to raise the ceiling of your capabilities. So then at the end of your cycle, we're fine tuning, we're doing shorter fartleks, we're doing some interval stuff, where during the beginning of your cycle, for instance, we're not doing that.
Sure. Yeah, the biggest difference is actually in the first half versus the second half. Because what you'll find as you're trying to do a periodized approach in that kind of a situation is if you're doing it right, you're actually going to be running longer distances at higher intensities when you get to the late stages of the schedule. But what you're not doing is you're not running those same intensities for shorter distances earlier in the schedule.
Right.
And so what the progression does is it does volume first with sustained efforts that are not terribly high intensity. And you're doing that type of stuff for a large period of time. And then over time, when you start nearing race date, the volume may begin to decline, but the level of intensity is going to go up. And the level of intensity over longer periods of time may also go up. It depends on what you're preparing for. That
Race specific.
Yeah, very race specific. But in principle, where the difference lies fundamentally is in the early stages. There's no point in trying to run the same pace across your training schedule, your training season, and just like increase the number of intervals, because in the early stages of training, that pace is not doing the same thing for you as it is in the late stages of training. So I understand they made up for that by changing the number of intervals, but you could use that time much differently earlier on that could be more effective. And that's the way we describe the difference, I guess.
Thanks for indulging me. I
Okay.
feel like we need to give more practical stuff besides, deconstructing these articles.
Well, we're kind of just trying to react to them, I guess. But number 5, this is the last one. We only share the top 5 because we don't have time to do any more than that. Number 5 was Nike. I don't know why Nike gets content into. So Nike only posts content because everyone thinks of Nike as an authority on the sport. But what they do with their content, this is fine, but they just find other people who know something about something and have them write an article and they put it on their website. So like Nike is not a source of good information, but some of the people who post on their website or do guest articles sometimes are great sources of information.
They have a
Just
content
depends.
curator,
Well, sure.
I'm
yeah.
sure.
But here's what it was. Nike, their article that posted number 5 for this question was a strength routine for runners.
It was not even a run workout.
That's not what I asked.
Strength for runners is great, but that was not the question.
Yeah, but they thought that's what I wanted, and that's what they gave me, and they just put it all in there. By the way, it's a routine with everything. So this strength routine is great for runners because it includes all the stuff you want to do as a runner, just a little bit of everything. And you know our approach, little bits of everything kinds of things are generally not terribly effective. But it is something to do, and they're not terrible ideas.
Right.
So
But
they're
it's
not
also
bad
not
exercises.
a running workout,
But
so
it's
it
not a
didn't
running
answer the question.
So it did not. All right, so 5 deep, and we got no answer to our question. Like
Oh
not
my
even
goodness.
an answer to our question.
Do we have more? We have more to share?
No, I just wanted to give a nod to other search engines because
Okay.
I am not of the general belief that Google is the only place to look for information. It certainly is generally the most convenient, but not the only. And so what do you find differently if you go to DuckDuckGo, for instance? And by the way, I should always mention, maybe I said this last time, I just can't remember. But the reason why we include DuckDuckGo as a point of reference here is because as a search engine, their whole thing is that they're not mining your data. And so DuckDuckGo is not trying to give you articles because they think they know who you are and what you want. Whereas Google and Bing are doing that.
Oh.
But Google especially. Bing's not
they
doing it
know
very
everything
well.
about you.
Yes. So DuckDuckGo was just all clickbait headlines. Everything that popped up was like the 10 best workouts to get faster. And it was like just random numbers. 19, 21. I'm not kidding. Like those were some of the headlines. 19 best workouts for a runner who's running this thing. 21 great workouts for everyone. And it's just like, okay, you didn't, once again, no good answer to my question. And then Bing was just the same. It was all the same as DuckDuckGo. It's just all the same articles even, basically.
Oh.
So we didn't get an answer. That was very unfortunate. But we thought since we didn't get an answer, we should
give an
probably
answer.
give the answer.
Yeah, let's give an A to Z running answer.
No, I said the answer, Andy.
Oh, goodness.
This is the answer. And the answer is there is no best runner. We already knew that. You knew where we were going. But there are certain things that you should do that you should prioritize more.
Priorities
as a
are
runner.
important, yes.
And there are certain things at certain times that are priorities, and there are certain things for certain people that are priorities based on like where you're at in terms of your general running experiences. So what it comes down to is if all of these other things are unknown, the best thing, the most important thing for runners to do is long, easy running. It just is.
Yep.
That is going to give you the most value for the time you're spending training. And so if you don't do anything else, running a lot of long, easy runs is not the worst way to do things. However, as the articles loved to say in this instance, variety is important and it is good. And so if you're looking for hard efforts, whether to spice up your long, easy running or because that's what you meant when you asked the question, what is the best running workout? Then our answer is long, steady running. Because once again, it's the same thing. You get the kinds of adaptations you need to be a successful runner at any distance you get from sustained moderate efforts or easy effort runs.
So please define steady for our audience.
There you go. Steady is just a little bit harder effort, higher effort than easy. That's it. That's all it is.
And the reason that it's good is because it helps build your aerobic capacity better than the easy runs. And if you are able to have diversity within your week and you do a long, easy effort, then a slightly shorter, steady effort, and then you do another long, like that is a really good combination for effectively and efficiently building your fitness.
Yep. And what it amounts to is being very deliberate about the difference too. Like a steady effort run needs to be different than an easy effort run. And far too many runners find that it's hard to find the difference there. So here's what happens. If you can't run steady for an hour when you're running, reasonable amounts of running in general. I mean, if you're only running 10 minutes a day and then you go out and try to run steady for an hour, that's a bad idea. But if you're running like an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours on a regular basis in your schedule, and you can't run a steady effort for an hour and sustain it the whole time, you're just running too hard. And then if you say to yourself, yeah, but I'm running almost the same pace as my easy runs, there you have your answer. Your easy runs are too hard, too high of an effort. So anyway, this is good stuff to do. Long, easy runs, steady efforts are great, and those are going to get you pretty much all the way there.
But that's not the full recipe for success. That's just answering the question, what things should be a priority?
What's the best running workout? What is the best running workout? Long, easy runs. But I meant a higher effort run than long, steady running. There you go.
There you go.
You have an answer. And it's not that complicated. There are a lot of other good things to do.
Lots.
And
at different times.
You should definitely do more than just long, easy running and long, steady runs. But you wanted to know the best, and we gave it to you.
Awesome. Well, now let's move on to our news and updates from the world of running. This week in the world of running, starting with AtoZrunner updates, we had Sarah, who narrowly missed her PR in every women's marathon, but she's been just getting faster and faster. It was several minutes faster than her last marathon, and she's just on this progression of getting stronger and fitter and more confident, and I'm loving it. So fun.
Great work, Sarah.
And St. Pete Run Fest half marathon. Madeline ran a strong mid-season half marathon.
Right on. So we got racing going on, but there's a lot of turkey runs happening soon too.
Yes, we'll have all kinds of turkey shenanigans to share about next week.
Yeah, and then we hit the quiet place because
the quiet place.
The quiet place
where we keep talking, but it's a little quieter.
Because not very many people run races between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And one, there's not that many races. Two, there's a lot of other things that people are doing with their time during these holiday seasons, and so it may be just that, but there's still things.
But there's not a lack of excitement this week because we have a world record to share about.
World record. So, first up, Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda set another world record on the roads. So you recall he previously held the half marathon world record until Yamif Kejelcha just recently broke it by just a tiny bit. And so apparently, with a little chip on his shoulder or something, he decides to go set a different one.
Maybe. I wonder if that was part of the decision making. Like, hey, I just really need to nab a world record.
Yeah, and I believe it was Joshua Cheptegei's world record. In fact, it's a 15K road record. And so his countryman, Cheptegei, he busted that record wide open. Running in the Netherlands, he finished in 40:42 for 15K. And so since it's
Obscure.
factor of fives, or rather fives are a factor of 15, then because of that, we can figure out how impressive this is just simply by saying what's his average for his 5Ks, 3 in a row. And the answer is 13:35. Well, it's just under 13:34 for 3 5Ks right in a row. And you say to yourself,
Smoking.
that's quite fast.
That is quite fast.
So it amounted to a kind of negative split, which makes it even more impressive because his last 5K was just like blazing. He came through 10K in 27:15.
Oh, wow.
But his second 10K was faster than his first 10K, if you use the middle 5K for both. And so that's just very, very impressive. Totally solo as well. He just ran by himself.
That's nuts.
Well,
All
you're
right.
running that fast. You're
Well,
always by
going
yourself.
from the seasoned runners to some that are up and coming, we're going to talk
Children.
about the NCAA Cross Country Regionals.
Yeah, so we don't have a lot to say about it, in part because we don't spend a ton of time following cross country on this podcast, although we personally very much
I think
enjoy
more
it.
than most.
Yeah, maybe.
We follow it. Fair enough.
But what we did encounter as we were combing through the information available, and Let's Run was a big source of this. We found some really odd things that happened at some of these regionals and wanted to share a few of them with you. One close to home is the Michigan State University men. And so they ran in, I can't remember what region it is, but they ran in their regionals and just missed qualifying for nationals. They were the first team out. And the reality was, if a runner in the race, well, what cost them their spot in nationals was apparently a runner celebrating too early.
Not from their team, but from
We're
a
just crossing
different
the
one
line.
that changed the mix of the teams. So
Yeah.
someone passed the celebrating person who ended up ahead of MSU.
So it's like the guy was about to win the race, and he was like celebrating it and excited, and the guy in second place was really close and passed him and beat him. And because the one in second place ended up first instead, and there's a point shift there, then MSU lost to that team. And so they didn't make nationals. And you have to look at that and just be like, that is just like, so literally in this instance, someone else controlled their ability to, which in cross country, there's a lot of that going on because it's not just your points that matter, but how many points other people get and who's in there. Yeah. So that was interesting. On the women's side, the first at-large bid. So they have, if you win top two in your region, make it. No, is it top two? It's top.
Don't ask me.
Top finisher in your region makes it automatically, and then there's like another thing. So there's a couple automatic qualifiers, and then the rest go to at-large bids, which are just the next best of everybody else. And they end up with, 24 teams at nationals, I think it is. And so what happened was the top at-large bid team who didn't automatically make it to nationals for the women is actually the nationally ranked number 3 team. And they didn't even automatically make it because they're just in such a difficult region.
They'll still go because they're going to
Yeah.
have high enough bid.
Yeah, they did. They were at large, so they made it. But they had to make it on a wild card, which is just
crazy.
astounding. Their region was crazy, though. Their region had the number 2 and number 3 ranked teams in the country and the number 12 ranked team in the country in their one region. And then this other region had the 1, 4, 9, and 10 ranked teams in the country.
Stacked.
Which is even more competitive. And by the way, on the women's side, that's the mountain region because that's NAU, that's BYU, that's Utah. So like all the best cross country runners teams in the country are basically in that region. It's crazy. Okay. And then a side note of tragedy is that the Colorado women, who are basically one of the most consistent forces in cross country in the country, didn't make nationals for the first time in 16 years. And it's their first year with a new coach after they basically ousted the fabled legendary Mark Wetmore. And if you're not familiar with the controversy surrounding that, you can go look it up. But the short summary is athletes accused him of being
harsh.
Yeah, I remember exactly the best way to describe it. But the way he would talk about food and weight and things like that and what he would ask his athletes to do. So he was accused of things that were not productive. And then a whole bunch of past athletes came out and said, no, he's amazing. That's not true. He didn't feel that way at all. And other people were like, yeah, actually he is like that. And so it's just this whole big thing. And he ended up getting ousted, and kind of vindicated slightly by the fact that the team did poorly.
Side note.
Yeah.
As with most things, with leadership and power, I do think that there should be checks and balances. I think that if you have a great coach, that they should have a team surrounding that person so that things like that don't happen, as a systematic problem. And that's why I think that a lot of strength comes from having groups of leadership or someone who has checks and balances or an accountability support system, so that there is a person who is flawed, who might have flawed ways of communicating or even flawed thoughts that can have people to come around and correct in a way that can be beneficial for everyone. Just a thought.
Absolutely. I, for one, have personally benefited from that reality where for a time when I was coaching high school, my assistant coach, Adam, as well as a close friend, has my entire life been the kind of person who just tells it to your face what he thinks you should or should not be doing.
Well, it's because you're such good friends. I'm not sure he does that with everybody, but there's a trust relationship there.
He might actually do that with everybody. It's a personality thing. He's one of those who...
And he's so friendly and good
absolutely,
at it.
He's a very kind person. But the point is, he has always been a force for... If there's something that I'm doing that is at borderline in any way, he's letting me know what he thinks about it.
That's great.
And it is great. And so you think about something like that, and it's like, yeah. So if I didn't have the people like, well, not to get into it, but I was involved in a kind of scandal myself when I was coaching high school that involved breaking some kind of rule that the sports governing body had, and ended up with a sanction and stuff. And so all of it amounts to...
Well, maybe you should tell them what it is so people don't go to the worst place possible.
It is a really obscure rule about transfer athletes who can't compete for a certain amount of time.
It wasn't like he was doing something like, giving drugs or something.
No.
It makes it sound like it was so bad. Okay, continue on. Continue.
And so we find ourselves in the situation where the legendary coach is out. All right, last thing about the regionals stuff was in the Mid-Atlantic region for the men, 2nd through 4th place teams were all separated by 1 point. Like 2nd and 3rd had the same score, and 4th had 1 point more. And so that's the closest possible finish you could have.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So those are kind of exciting things. And what we're going to do is we're going to share with you now cross country is like doing its big things now. NCAA nationals are happening here shortly. The high school national meets are happening shortly. The Nike Cross Nationals Foot Locker, although is it still called Foot Locker anymore? Or is it something? I think it's called something else again.
Yeah, it's called
or maybe they
something
switched
else.
it back. But anyway, Foot Locker, who doesn't sponsor Foot Locker anymore, but they still just call it that. I don't know the situation. So all of that's coming, and it's just a great opportunity to hear who the latest and greatest of the Utes are in the running universe.
Well, finally, we have something fun to wrap this up, something interesting.
Yeah.
Spray on shoes.
Is it a thing, Andy? Is it the next great innovation in running shoe technology?
I have to say the results do speak as far as the person who wore the prototype.
Okay, if a person is a generational talent.
Exactly. I don't know.
Does it matter what shoes that she wears?
She could have worn anybody's shoes probably.
We are, of course, talking about Helen O'Beary and On Running. Are they called On Running or are they called On Athletics? I don't know. On, the shoe company. So they have a new super shoe out. It just was released at the Paris Olympics and was used in prototype by Helen O'Beary first at the Boston Marathon 2024. And she won, which is great look for their new shoe. And then she was a bronze medalist at the Paris Olympics, which is not a bad look. And then proceeded to take second place in the New York City Marathon, all wearing what amounts to a foot glove
on top
that has a super shoe base. This was incredible. So this was shared by Run by Outside. So our source there, because they include, if you find it there, they include a video of the manufacturing of the shoe. It's pretty cool to watch. And what you get is a machine that is spraying a filament and slowly forming the upper to the shoe. There are no seams. There are no laces. There are no pull, tightening, anythings. It's just a solid, basically, sock upper. But it's solid and tight. In fact, athletes who have tried it or just tried it on have said it's like putting on a wetsuit. It is difficult to get this shoe on.
Right. It has to work for the right person, I would assume, as well, depending on foot anatomy.
I mean, my first reaction right out the gate is my feet are narrower on average than the regular person. And my toes are substantially differently shaped and longer than the regular person. And so how could that shoe work the same for me as it could for Andy, who has much differently dimensioned feet than I do?
Both very bony, though.
Yeah, well, we're runners, so we don't really have an answer to that. Yeah. I want to try it. I do want to try it. Not like a
hey, Ann, you want to send us some shoes for Zach to try?
Call Dathan, Andy. Call Dathan and say we need to try a pair of those shoes.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Well, I do think it's interesting how things develop, innovation. Obviously, it's going to be lighter than most uppers because it doesn't have laces. I would assume.
Probably, yeah, because you can make
a light
that
filament.
Right?
Also, it's probably cost effective now that they have the machinery to do it.
You think so?
It's not very much.
It's one material.
Product.
Yeah, it's one material. So this is actually the other, we didn't say, but what it actually is, the filament, is it's a single strand.
1.5 meters.
Meters? Kilometers, right?
Oh.
1.5 meters would be very short to fill a whole upper.
I don't know.
I think it's basically a mile-long filament. Okay, and so it's one constant thread. This talking about, there's so many great analogies here. It's one constant thread, and they just weave it and wrap it around over and over and over and over and over, and you get to the point where you end up with a formed upper for a shoe. Yeah. And I'm watching this thing being manufactured in the video, and I'm like, no way.
It's going to be like $330, I thought I saw.
Yeah, it's costly.
So anyway, it's just interesting. We think that all the technology that moves our sport forward or sideways or whatever way that shoe's moving, you definitely move Helen O'Beary forward. I think it's interesting to talk about.
True that. So there you have it. We're ending on a fascinating note. And we're going to continue with our great series on attacking the search engines. And we would certainly love to cover whatever questions are most on your mind. We've talked about topics like how to get faster or what happens as we age and running performance and such. And so we've got some of these thoughts queued up, but we're always happy to entertain others if you have some ideas. So send them on our way.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.